Hello and welcome to another edition of Pete's This Week from the Kojiko TV production studios. The Pete's, one of the hottest teams in the OHL right now, a 5-game win streak. Another team on a 5-game win streak, the Erie Otters, they'll be rolling into town on Thursday. So today we're chatting with Victor Fernandes from the Erie Times down in Erie. And Victor, what's it like covering that team? And over the years, they've gone through it all. And now one of the top teams, the top team at this point in the OHL.
Absolutely. It's a lot better to cover a winning team than a losing team, that's for sure. Last 4 years have been as good as it gets. I wasn't around in Erie when the Otters went through their 3-year run back, ending in '02 with their only championship in franchise history. But they've come so close the past 3 years and are certainly well on their way to making another deep run in the playoffs again this year. And I guess the biggest difference is, especially compared to say last year. They've really made a serious push to making this the year they have to win, because in reality they do. They're going to go through a bit of a rebuild next year or two. They're going to lose some key players, Dylan Strome, Alex DeBrincat, players like that after this season. So the additions of players like Anthony Cirelli, Warren Foegele, Cam Lizotte, bringing in Owen Hedrick from the NCAA hockey, it shows that Dave Brown and Chris Knobloch are truly serious about making a deep run. And no guarantees. We see how the West is this year. It's top heavy, really, from 1 through 5 and really 6. So there's no guarantees, but they've certainly put themselves in a position to make a deep run.
And that arms race, from the perspective of somebody in the East, it looks nuts. And those teams are loading up with guys that we're familiar with. Cam Lizotte, former Peterborough Pete, Anthony Cirelli, we've seen him just down the road from us in Oshawa, and then Warren Foegele as well in Kingston, all within the division for the Petes. And what kind of impact has that had on the players specifically? When they see that adding, I know that Dylan Strome was talking about it after the World Juniors, specifically Anthony Cirelli, what he could mean to the team. But what's that like for those players on the team when they see that?
Well, I mean, GM Dave Brown said it to me right after the trade deadline that, if you had polled the players at this time last season and asked them if they thought, the staff did as much as they could, to put them in a position to win a championship last year, the majority would have said no. They really hung back knowing they were going to be still a somewhat young team coming into this year. There's no looking back now. They've spared no expense, in essence, turned over every stone they could to find the players that fit best. Warren Foegele and Anthony Cirelli are a lot alike. The type of game they play, are really good at both ends of the ice, do a lot of the little things. Cirelli's great on draws. They're both great on the penalty kill. They both can put the puck in the back of the net and contribute offensively. Cam Lizotte, a big, strong, physical guy who makes life tough for opposing forwards in the offensive zone. And then being able to land an Owen Hedrick, a Division I player, 4 years, almost 4 years after drafting him in the 2013 OHL draft. They've really shored up every potential hole or concern that they had going into the trade deadline. But like I said earlier, no guarantees in the West. I've said it before.
Yeah.
Throw a blanket over the top 5 or 6 teams in the West, start picking them out, and each one of those teams has a legitimate reason or reasons really to say they're the best in the Western Conference and deserve to win an OHL championship. And to be honest, the one team people may not be talking about as much, to me, is maybe the hottest team in the league, and that's the Owen Sound Attack. There's a team that nobody wants to play in the first round because the style they play, that gritty, hard-nosed, fundamentally sound physical style, is great when it comes to playoff hockey. We saw last year they were the only team in the postseason to beat the London Knights, beat them a couple of times, and actually had a lead in that series. So, with all the work the Otters have done, there's really and the other teams as well, there's really no guarantees, and you're going to have a few teams that are going to be out by the second round, and that's unfortunate because this Western Conference is absolutely stacked, and any one of those teams is good enough to win an OHL title.
Absolutely, and the Owen Sound Attack had that tough third period against the London Knights. Now, for the people in the Western Conference, what do you guys think of the playoff format this year? Do you wish there was something different?
Well, absolutely. And I've covered the OHL now going on 14 years. And for the most part, with the exception of a season or two, Oshawa from a couple of years back that won the OHL Memorial Cup titles comes to mind. The Western Conference has been the dominant conference just about every season. maybe not as pronounced as it is this year, but certainly the West has always been the toughest, and it's really, especially the Midwest division. You look at, with London, Owen Sound, the Otters, Guelph won a championship just a few years ago. Kitchener is there every year. It's a shame that you're going to have a number of these teams are going to be out. Half these teams are going to be out by the end of the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. And you look at, they would essentially dominate any team in the Eastern Conference. You look at Kitchener, 6th place in the West, for a stretch there, would have been first in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Any of the top teams would have a commanding lead in the Eastern Conference right now. So you really have to look at it and say, this isn't an anomaly. This isn't just something that happens once in a blue moon. This is happening just about every year. It's hard to pinpoint why, but you see every year the Western Conference 1 through 5, 1 through 6 are always a much more dominant group of teams than what you see on the other side in the Eastern Conference. So maybe you need to go to a 1 through 20, or in this case a 1 through 16, playoff format, because ultimately you would like to see the two best teams in the OHL playing for an OHL championship. You'd like to see Erie against London, or Owen Sound in there, or Windsor, or Sault Ste. Marie's having a great year. You look at what's on the east side. Peterborough's on a good run. Oshawa's played well this year. But are either one of those teams going to be able to stack up against any one of those top 5 or 6 in the West? At this point, I don't think so.
Yeah, a lot of people would agree with you, I'm sure, and there have been crossover situations in the past in the OHL, and that's something we're going to be looking out for on Thursday when Erie does come to town in Peterborough. The Petes came off a win against the Soo Greyhounds. I know they were looking forward to testing themselves against them, but the Erie Otters style of play, how would you define it as it grows? We don't get a chance to see a lot of them in Peterborough. Not all the games actually make it up here on television. But in terms of the style of play that they do have, does it grow going from the McDavid era, going forward with Strome and DeBrincat, guys like that? How does it change? How does Chris Knobloch really mold that team?
It really hasn't changed a whole lot because they've had so much skill on the front and back ends, really, for the past 3 or 4 years, essentially since Chris Knobloch arrived. This is a team that likes to play an aggressive, fast-paced, flowing offensive style where they stress puck possession. They understand as long as they have the puck, the other team doesn't, which means they're not going to get a whole lot of offensive scoring chances at the other end. And you can see that they lead the league in fewest shots on goal against per game. That's not, that's not a deceiving statistic. They simply don't allow teams to possess the puck consistently well. And when the opposing teams do have the puck, they're really strong at the defensive end, both from a physical perspective, in the sense that they added a Cam Lizotte on the back end. They have Eric Chernak. Darren Radish plays a physical style as well. And they've also got players on the back end who skate well, who possess the puck well, who can carry it up the ice on their own, but also make that first pass well and then able to join the rush. So more often than not, it's one shot on Troy Timpano and Joseph Murdaka, and the puck's going the other way. That's the style they've employed. The names and players have changed, but the style stays the same. It's gone from Connor McDavid to Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat. Taylor Radish is a player whose game has really revolutionized his game over the past couple of years. I've been here almost 14 years and can't recall a single player who has evolved more his all-around game more than Taylor Radish has the past couple of years. He's a completely different player, and it's a credit to what Chris Knobloch and his staff have done, but it's also a credit to what Taylor Radish has done over the past couple of years to really improve his game in all facets. This is a team, when they get on a roll, when they start rolling 4 lines and they start pressuring opposing defenses and the flow is there, they're really a tough team to stop. But on the flip side, they're starting to finally come out of their funk when it comes to playing on the road.
Yeah.
Up until this 3-game stretch where they really did a good job against Sarnia, and Flint really dominated those two teams a couple weekends ago, and then walked into London and got a huge win on the road at Budweiser Gardens last weekend. This is a team, that really struggled on the road. I mean, the goal differential, I've never seen anything like it. They going into that 3-game stretch, they were a almost plus 80 on home ice, and they were a minus 11 on the road. almost as a 90-goal swing. But they're now starting to come around on the road. So it'd be interesting to see what they do against Peterborough. That's a tough rink to play in. It's the cozy confines of the Memorial Center there. Tough rink to play in. They don't, like you said, the Peterborough doesn't see the Otters very often all year. Well, it works both ways. They don't see Peterborough a whole lot all year. So it'd be interesting to see what Otters team we see moving forward.
Absolutely. And one last thing I want to touch on is actually Dylan Strome and Darren Radish. Now the all-time franchise leader in points by defenseman in Darren Radish, and all-time points leader in Dylan Strome. For you, over the time that you've watched them, you would have seen their whole careers. Where do they rank for you in terms of the most impressive players you've seen with the Erie Otters?
Well, it's funny you ask that, because that's the same, I guess, internal conversation I've had with myself when it comes specifically to Dylan Strome. I did a top 20 players in Otters history last season as part of the Otters 20th anniversary season. And I had Dylan Strome at that time ranked as the 9th best player overall. But now you factor in, he's the all-time leading scorer. He's the all-time assist leader past Connor McDavid earlier this year. He's got an opportunity to do what only one other captain in Otters history has done, Brad Boyes, and that's win an OHL championship. At that point, if he wins an OHL championship and gets them to a Memorial Cup and wins a Memorial Cup, he's certainly got to be in the discussion with Brad Boyes and Connor McDavid. Ultimately, right now, I would say he's either 2 or 3 with Brad Boyes there, Connor McDavid being number 1, given the impact he made on this franchise off the ice from a global perspective. But certainly, if they win a championship this year and he takes them to a Memorial Cup championship, it's almost hard not to put him at number 1, even when it means putting him ahead of a Connor McDavid, who's one of the best junior players of all time, and Brad Boyes, who's right now the most revered player in Otters history.
Absolutely. Now for you, you're on Twitter. Where can people follow you? What kind of stuff are you putting out there?
Well, they can follow me on GoErie.com, first of all, which is the Erie Times News website. Go Erie Hockey is my Twitter handle. All things hockey, not just Otters. You got high school hockey, you got college hockey here in town as well. The rest of the OHL. I'll dabble in the NHL and other pro leagues as well. Certainly Etienne Fernandes is my other Twitter handle as well for other sports that I cover. Don't just do hockey here with our size staff. We all do a little bit of everything. Instagram as well. Etienne Fernandes, do a lot about hockey there as well. On Tout as well. So Etienne Fernandes there. So there's quite a few different places where you can find Otters hockey. We certainly try to do the best we can with Otters coverage, and without tooting my own horn, I think we've done a pretty good job over the years, and it's not just me, it's the entire staff as well.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Victor. Do you travel with the team?
Not during the regular season as much as I used to in the past, but at playoff time, we travel from beginning to end, so I'd imagine I'll be on the road quite a bit this coming spring.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us. This is Victor Fernandes from Erie Times News. We'll head to break now. When we come back, we have a feature with a few people who have made their lives around the Peterborough Petes. You're watching Petes This Week on Kojiko TV.